guest speaker today. He's Dennis Yablonsky, who became the CEO of the Allegheny Conference on Community Development in March of 2009. Many of you may know Dennis. He's been a leader in business. He's also been involved in nonprofit economic development and a high-ranking government official. Most recently, he served as Secretary of the Pennsylvania DCED from 2003 to 2008, which many of you will remember or know of that particular agency. When he was there, he developed a $3 billion economic stimulus project to support critical infrastructure and other developments around the state. He's also the founding CEO of the Pittsburgh Digital Greenhouse and the Pittsburgh Life Sciences Greenhouse, and the CEO of software company Syncom Systems, and CEO of Carnegie Group are in his background as well. So I had the pleasure of hearing Dennis speak at a PICPA event earlier this year when he spoke about diversity and found his presentation to be very interesting. So we asked him to come today and to speak to us about the state of the Pittsburgh and local economy, as well as issues that we'll all be facing in the future. So I'd ask that you please welcome Dennis. He does have about a half-hour presentation. He indicated that he will answer questions afterwards, but he will not be available to stay with us for the lunchtime. He has to leave right after his presentation to go to the airport. Condor Airlines out of Germany is announcing a new nonstop flight to Frankfurt, and he's going to be there for that particular occasion. So I'd like to turn it over and welcome Dennis Yablonsky.
Thanks, John. Thanks, good morning. Good to be with you. Obviously, great turnout. What I'll be talking about over the next 30 minutes will be just a little bit less technical than what I heard during the last session. Hopefully enjoyable and hopefully informative. This is the really fun part of my job. I've got kind of a bipolar job in that half of my work is promoting the region to businesses and people and telling all the good things about it, and that's mostly what I'm going to do with you this morning. The other half of my job is staring in the face the most challenging, long-term, intractable problems that we have and trying to figure out how we pull together to address them. Most of what I'm going to do is the promotion side, but I will also share with you the three big issues that we're facing and some of the opportunities, and there should be plenty of time for some Q&A afterwards, including on air service if you want to hear a little bit more about what's going on. So hope that works for you, because that's all I got today. Now my slides, which I think are available, if the group wants to make them available, I'm happy to do that. I'm going to walk through some slides, give you some fun facts about what's going on in the region, how we got there, and then what some of the challenges and the opportunities are. So first of all, when I use the term Pittsburgh today, I'm not talking about the city, I'm not talking about just Allegheny County, I'm talking about the region, the 10-county metropolitan statistical area, which has a population of 2.6 million people and a gross regional product that's would be a good-sized country in many parts of the world, and a GDP, by the way, that's growing at about 4 or 5% a year, faster than the national GDP. So we're productively growing our economy, particularly over the last X number of years. Now, some fun facts. More people working in the 10 counties than ever before in our history, significantly more than at the peak of our industrial era in the late 70s and early 80s. And while the economists argue about what the rate of that line is going to look like, nobody's arguing that it's not going to continue to steadily grow up. It's slowed down recently. If you've read any of the recent economic reports, there's been slowdowns. Part of that is due to the energy industry. There's other factors as well, but we're still growing our regional economy in terms of productivity and in terms of jobs. More about sector development in a couple of minutes. And from a marketing perspective, I don't think our brand as a region, as the Pittsburgh region, has ever been better. There's not a week or a month that goes by anymore where there isn't another study that touts what's happening in Pittsburgh, another ranking. You see a few of them here. Generally, we're getting wonderful rankings for livability, for cost, one of the best places for recent graduates in the country in a number of studies. As a kid from McKeesport, the travel one is one of the more interesting things for me. We were ranked as one of the top 20 places in the world to visit by National Geographic magazine last year. Top 20, only 2 of them were in the United States, Sonoma, California, and Pittsburgh. I know, I'm talking crazy, but it's true, and tourism has become a bigger and bigger part of our regional economy. And there's always some fun things. 2 of the more fun and interesting recent rankings that I get a kick out. We were ranked the 3rd happiest place in the country. In spite of our weather, we were ranked, you could probably guess what was the least happy place in America, right? Anybody get a guess? Yeah, everyone always gets it right. It's Cleveland. I hate to pick on our brothers in Cleveland. They're a little happier now. That NBA championship, I think, helped them a lot. But yeah, they're regularly ranked. And every single time I ask that question, the first answer is right. But in a corollary to the happiest, we are #1 in the country in bars per capita. You see the linkage. But there's all kinds of, I mean, I have a blast with this stuff. There's all kinds of fun little things that come out. But the key is, the fundamental issue is our brand is really good. Pittsburgh's on the map. People are wondering what's going on. We've had 42 of the top 100 metros in America visit us in the last 8 years to do a benchmarking trip. 42, including a month ago, the Silicon Valley Chamber was here, visiting us, examining what we're doing right. So our brand's good, and we're trying to utilize that as best we can for more business attraction, but also more talent attraction. But it's interesting, go back 33 years, 1983, low point in our economic history. Our unemployment rate regionally was 18.3%. Think about that, it's 5 point something now, 18.3%. My hometown had a 25% unemployment rate. Beaver County, the most industrialized of our 10 counties, had a 29% unemployment rate, lost 100,000 manufacturing jobs, 250,000 people left the region. We get reminded of it 8 Sundays every year. You're thinking, what's he talking about? When the Steelers play somewhere else, there's always Steeler fans in the stands, and the announcers always get it wrong. They always say, boy, those Steeler fans really travel well. They live there. That's a living, breathing, unfortunate reminder of those 250,000 people, and they're now kids, in some cases grandkids, still fiercely loyal to Pittsburgh, and particularly sports Pittsburgh, but we get reminded of it 8 times every year, unfortunately. So how did we get from there to here? It's kind of interesting. First and foremost, we diversified and balanced the economy. In 1983, the economy was heavily dependent on one sector. Today, the largest of our 5 sectors is about 22% of the regional economy. And you're probably wondering which one that is, and the answer is it depends on how you measure it. If you measure it based on jobs, it's eds and meds. If you measure it based on contribution to the regional economy, it's the sector you're in, finance and related business services, because you pay more, you pay taxes, you make profit, and all those things contribute to gross regional product. But we went from a dedicated, almost dedicated economy to one sector to one that's balanced and diversified and innovation driven. And these 5 sectors are the sectors that are the primary drivers of the regional economy. The other thing that we did is we invested in the quality of the place. And we were able to do that in a disproportionately large way because of our history and our legacy of large industrial and banking concerns who created foundations. We've got about a dozen significant foundations in the region. Collectively, they have assets north of $6 billion. They invest almost exclusively regionally, which is different. If you go to New York, Philly, DC, other places, you'll find big foundations, like the Pew Foundation in Philadelphia, for example, but it's a national foundation. They do things on a national level. Our foundations invest in the region. So every year, north of $300 million of grant making occurs in broadly what you would call quality of life kinds of issues. You do that over 20, 30, 40 years, all of a sudden interesting stuff starts to happen. Maybe the best example is in 1984, my organization started and spun out an entity called the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust. Cultural Trust mission was to create a modern new cultural district. That district now exists. It's a national gem. It's a 10-block area with almost all of our cultural assets, restaurants, hotels, bars, etc. For those of you who are my age or close, you remember what that was like in the 50s and 60s and even the 70s. It was a red light, drug-infested, dangerous part of downtown Pittsburgh. The foundations were the funding mechanism behind that. They provided the funding to make that happen. It was then subsequently matched by corporate and individual giving, but we are blessed to have this foundation community. And so while the economy was being diversified, we had all these investments going on to turn the place into what it is today. And now we've got both a good economy and we've got a wonderful place for people to live and raise families. And so it's a whole different place. A little bit more detail on the sectors. We track every year, we have a press conference in March where we announce all of the publicly announced corporate expansion projects during the previous calendar year. Now, obviously, the most recent was 2015. There were 275 public announcements of job creation, job retention, and capital investment during that year. It was the third highest number of projects in a metro in the Northeast. We've been as high as number one in previous years, and number three, been 1, 2, 3, or 4 most of those years. There's a total of 5,400 new jobs committed as part of those announcements, and this is like a forward indicator. These are projects announced in 2015 where the jobs and capital will be created in 15, 16, 17. So it's a little bit of a leading indicator. And almost $3 billion in capital investment was associated with that. Maybe more interesting to this group is the breakdown of those projects and those jobs. And most people are surprised when I say in 2015, it was the 6th year out of the last 7 where advanced manufacturing was the #1 sector. Number 1 in jobs, number 1 in capital investment. And most of these are small and medium-sized projects. And by the way, the Shell project didn't come in 15. That'll be in 16. That'll throw the numbers completely out of whack, particularly the capital numbers. More to come on Shell later. But manufacturing, we still make stuff here. There's still companies expanding their manufacturing here. There's still companies moving in from outside of here establishing manufacturing. And it's been the top sector in this analysis 6 of the last 7 years. Energy was number 1 or 2 for a number of years, obviously with macroeconomics happening in that industry, it dropped to number 4. Business and financial services and IT tied for second. Technology has traditionally been second or third just about every year. Business and financial services has always been in the top 4. And then rounding it out is healthcare and life sciences. We track this every year. We look for reasons why we win, reasons why we lose, a little bit more on that in a couple of minutes. But thought you'd be interested in some of those facts because this is the future of your customer base. And this is all 10-county, regional, metro Pittsburgh. Now, I happen to believe that in spite of some of our challenges, which I'll cover in a minute, our region is better positioned for success than ever before in my adult lifetime. A few trends that will highlight that. As of yesterday morning, there were a little over 26,000 open jobs in the 10 counties. We have a website called imaginepittsburgh.com. If you got family or friends that are looking for jobs, this is the only place where you can find all the open positions in the 10 counties and just in the 10 counties. And we don't have companies send jobs to us. We scour the web on our own. A job has to be posted online. If it's not posted online, we can't get it. It's posted online. We created a little metadatabase, and then you can enter whatever text string you want to try to look for jobs out there. It's updated daily. So it's constantly being changed. It's never been below, it's been up for 6 years, it's never been below 20,000 open jobs. It's been as high as 33,000. Jobs get filled, new ones come on. And they're across all sectors and all size companies. I think the largest one has 500 open jobs. So it isn't like there's one company that's got 5,000 out there. This is lots of companies with 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 jobs across all the different sectors. So there's opportunity out there. I'm going to talk about why we're not filling these faster in a couple of minutes. Our wage trends are also going up. For the first time in decades, we're approaching national averages as far as wages are concerned. That's obviously a mixed bag depending on your perspective. A lot of people tell me, yeah, we're adding jobs, Dennis, but we're just adding those low-pay service jobs. That's absolutely not true. 43% of our jobs are classified as high pay on a national scale. The average for a major metro is about 37%. So our manufacturing, finance, IT, eds and meds sectors are higher pay on average. So the wages are going up. We're starting to trend younger on population. This chart's a little busy, but if you look at the bottom line, the city of Pittsburgh has dropped its median age 3 years in the last decade. That's an off-the-charts demographic change. 3 years, median average reduction over the last 10 years. Allegheny County's come down. The outer counties are a little older, but they're starting to trend off. The only reason this isn't moving faster is we're the only major metro in America that has more deaths than births. Otherwise, this would be changing even more dramatically. More deaths than births, only place in the country. But we are getting younger, and maybe even more important, the younger cohort is better educated than the older cohort and better educated by far than national averages. Our 25 to 44-year-old group, higher level of high school education, higher level of 2-year, 4-year advanced degrees, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of very interesting trends. So why aren't we filling the jobs more frequently and with better pace? This issue is the #1 issue for my organization's 320 members. #1 issue that gets brought up, can't find enough people to meet our replacement needs, much less our new hiring needs. Bill Demchek, the CEO of PNC, agreed to take the board lead on this issue and figure out what we needed to do and how deep the problem was. So first thing we did was get the facts. We just completed a study. We launched this study in May of this year. It's called Inflection Point. We worked with a national firm called Burning Glass Technologies. This is all their expertise is just in this. What we found is that over the next 10 years, we will have 290,000 existing working baby boomers retire. That's 25% of the total workforce. In addition, conservatively, the estimate is we'll need 5,000 a year, 50,000 new people. And I believe that number's low. That's 340,000 known job replacements that have to occur, job hires that have to occur. If every kid, now let's move to the supply side. If every kid that graduates from our K through 12 system stays and gets a job here, we're 8,000 a year short. Now obviously that's a ridiculous assumption. We're not going to keep all those kids. They're not all going to have the right skills to work here. Huge supply and demand problem, and because of our relatively old demographics, we are facing this problem first in the country. Most of the other major metros will eventually get here. They're not there yet. We're first in line. We got to figure out how to solve this problem. The difficulty is we have skill mismatches. We aren't diverse enough. We're not retaining enough college graduates. That's an interesting dynamic. We graduate 40,000 kids from our 61 institutions of higher learning in the 10 counties every year. 40,000. Half of them stay, which is, by the way, better than most people thought and better than it was 5 years ago. But a lot of the metros, they're keeping 60 or 70%. That's one source of solving the problem. Another source is continuing to attract from the outside. The third source is to elevate people out of unemployment. We've got an all hands on deck issue going on with this right now, trying to deal with the problem and do as much as we possibly can. But our leaders and our board, led by Bill Demchek in particular, have identified this as our #1 issue that we've got to look at and figure out how to solve. I think we will, but it's going to take an all-hands-on-deck issue or work effort. A couple of other things in the challenge category. Assuming we can get enough people, our aging infrastructure is a huge challenge. Roads, bridges, rail, air service, water and sewer, sites, et cetera. The water and sewer issue is an interesting one. 83 times a year, when there's any level of rain in Pittsburgh, you probably think it rains more than 83 times, but not much more than that. But 83 times a year, raw sewage overflows into our rivers and streams. And if you follow it, if you get on Alcosan's website and get their advisories, they will send you notices when this happens, and generally the notice is accompanied by a warning not to go into the rivers. Don't swim, don't boat. We had an Ironman competition here a few years ago where virtually everybody got sick after swimming in the river. I mean, it's like a third world country in Pittsburgh when it rains hard. Now, we're not alone. Most old northern cities have similar 100-year-old infrastructure, but the price tag to fix it's about $3 billion. About $3 billion. But it's got to be fixed. It's a quality of life issue. It's a competitiveness issue. And frankly, if you spend the money, it's a job creation issue. So that's one example. Our roads and bridges are another. This place is gorgeous. Driving down here, beautiful drive, but it's a nightmare for building roads and bridges. Our air service, of course, is an issue. We're making good progress. Since the new head of the airport authority, Christina Casotis, took over 18 months ago, I guess it was, we've gone from 37 nonstop destinations at the Pittsburgh International Airport to 64. 37 to 64. A number of those are leisure airlines like Allegiant, but some really interesting stuff. Just recently, we now have service to Harrisburg daily. For those of you who do work in Harrisburg, Southern Airways has a daily flight. Excuse me. Earlier this week, WOW Airlines, which is the Icelandic Air, announced nonstop service to Reykjavik. Probably wondering who wants to go to Reykjavik, but it's a beautiful country. But they have connections, easy connections to 20 other European cities, and the pricing is very, very attractive. So if you want to get to Europe, low cost, going on WOW through Reykjavik is a good option. And today at 12:30, I'm on my way there as soon as I'm done, we will be announcing Condor Air establishing nonstop service to Frankfurt, Germany. It'll only run initially 2 days a week, Monday, Friday. It is a leisure-focused airline, but the plane is a big jet with business class, a nice business class area. So it will service business people who want to go out Monday, come back Friday, or go out Friday, come back Monday, or vice versa. So we're making progress. We're ticking these things off. And then the other big development in the airport was OneJet. How many of you have flown on OneJet? Anybody? How many of you have heard of OneJet? A few. It's fascinating. OneJet is a startup airline. They have two hubs, if you will. One is in Pittsburgh. They only fly to cities that we don't service nonstop now. So they're flying to Cincinnati, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Hartford, and somebody else. I can't remember who it is. There's a fifth. They're going to eventually get to about 10. They fly up in the morning. They fly back at night. So you don't have to stay overnight. It's a 7-seater semi-luxury business jet, and the pricing is $100, $150 more than you would pay to take a connection to get to that city. It's absolutely wonderful and booked all the time, and they're adding more and more service. And you might wonder, well, aren't they eventually going to get the competition take them out? No, because they fly a 7-seater plane. And none of the big airlines are interested in economically in running that kind of a service. And it's a business-focused service. There's all kinds of interesting stuff. Clearly, we got to do a better job of getting awareness out there about this. But there's all kinds of interesting things happening on that front. Now, opportunities. Let me talk about opportunities for a minute. First and foremost, I mentioned the Shell cracker. We all know about, I think, what's happening there. But this is an anchor tenant, if you will, for the potential building of a whole new cluster in our region of companies that use our natural gas resources as a feedstock for the manufacturing process. In this case, it's ethane. The Shell project, they haven't disclosed how much they're going to spend, but the American Chemistry Council estimates that a modern cracker like this will require at least $6 billion of capital investment. To put that into perspective, the largest single capital investment in the last 30 years in the region was ATI's new Brackenridge facility, which was $1.3 billion. Big project, but a fourth the size, a fifth the size almost of Shell. There will be 2,000 construction workers on that site over a 6-year construction cycle. It will peak at 5,000 construction workers building that facility. There will be 600 people, permanent, full-time people running the plant, and it will be supplied and serviced by 3,000 additional people required to do it. The annual economic impact of that one project is estimated at around $4 billion a year in a $136 billion economy. And it is the anchor tenant of what will be a series of other, once you have something like this, other things start to come around. And the impact, draw a 100-mile circle around that facility, Eastern Ohio, Northern West Virginia, wide swaths of Western Pennsylvania, companies and businesses will be involved in that cluster within a 100-mile radius. To say that this is a game-changing opportunity would be, I think, a modest statement. And it's been 5 years in the making by lots of different people. Wonderful opportunity. Second interesting development that's occurring here is we're becoming a national center for additive manufacturing, which is the new 3D printing, if you will, way of designing, testing, and building products. GE has established its National Additive Manufacturing Center here out near the airport. Alcoa, now Arconic, has created their National Center for Additive Manufacturing. The universities are actively involved in this. The federal government gave us a $25 or $30 million grant to create an additive manufacturing research center for the tri-state area. It's actually housed in Youngstown. Lots of new things happening there. And then finally, on the tech side, you've got robotics and cybersecurity, which are quickly becoming real businesses with real opportunities. One perfect example is Uber establishing its National Center for Design, Development, and hopefully manufacturing of their autonomous vehicles. It's being done here because of all the robotics expertise that we've got. So lots of interesting opportunities along with the challenges, but as I said before, I've never been more optimistic. We've got a balanced, diversified, innovation-driven economy. We have a engaged CEO group. My organization has a board of 55 CEOs of the largest companies in the region, all very personally engaged with their time and energy. We've got a history of working together to solve problems, and as long as we identify them, quantify them, and stand up to them, I think we're going to be able to deal with our infrastructure issues, with our workforce issues, and continue the growth and success that we've had as a region over the last decade. So with that, John, time for Q&A? Good. I think you told me that's right about 30 minutes, and then we've got some time for questions, comments, challenges, anything you want to talk about. Yes, sir.
Dennis, the infrastructure spend about $3 billion. Is that primarily the Allegheny County, or is that the Penn?
You're referring to the project I worked on when I was at state government?
No, the water project.
Sorry, the water and sewer. That is entirely an Allegheny County Alcosan issue. They're going to spend that partly on traditional gray infrastructure, expansion of tanks and plants and so forth. And they're also, the mayor's been pushing hard for a green element to this, which is a source reduction, doing things to reduce the amount of water that gets into the system. The hope is that we can get the $3 billion down to about $2 billion, which is it's the level at which the EPA says you can charge the ratepayers. It's an affordable level. $3 billion is not, but that's all Allegheny County. The rest of our counties have similar problems, but probably not as big. And I should add, that does not include the investment that the 83 independent municipal sewer authorities that we have in Allegheny County, who are also under an EPA consent decree, have to spend as well. So there'll be additional spending. But that's all just Allegheny County to start. You're welcome. Yes. Okay. Well, either I was crystal clear or I bored you to tears.
Could you comment on the diversity situation in the city? I mean, that's what I heard you speak about, and I thought that was particularly interesting.
Yeah, this is an interesting sub-theme to the workforce issue. We are the least diverse region in America. Look around the room. I usually can say that with impunity. It's 13% of our workforce are minorities and immigrants. That's up, by the way, from 11% 5 years ago, so it's moving in the right direction. But the national average for a major metro is 32%. Why? Demographics. 55% of the new births in the United States last year were minorities and immigrants. That number is going to get higher and higher. So pure demographics say you can't sustain a workforce that looks like the one in this room. Number two, if you have any interest at all in attracting millennials and the 25 to 44-year-old group, this is an issue that's on their mind. They're interested in it. They want to work, live, and play in an inclusive, integrative type of environment. Culturally, those are your future leaders. You've got to figure out a way to do that. This was once a very diverse place. When my grandparents immigrated here in 1905, this is one of the most diverse places in the country. We lost that diversity and we missed out on a lot of the diverse migration that was occurring because we didn't have jobs for 20 years. From the early 80s until about 10 years ago, there was no opportunity here. Anybody that came from outside was taking a job away from somebody here. That's no longer the case. We don't have enough people, particularly enough people with the right skills. So dealing with that issue at a macro level, which I work on, at a micro level in your companies is absolutely important and essential, and it's also the right thing to do. So that's one of the sub-themes under the workforce problem that we're facing right now is the lack of diversity. So it's starting to get better. We've got 5,000 Bhutanese and Nepalese refugees back in my home area after I was born in McKeesport, but I grew up in Baldwin. Baldwin has in two big apartment complex areas, has about 5,000 refugees from Bhutan and Nepal. Their kids are going to school, they're working. I mean, we're starting to see some changes. Beachview is becoming a little cluster of Mexican and Latinos with restaurants and grocery stores. So we're beginning to see some changes there, but we need it to happen faster. So thanks. Yes? Yeah, and you said 30 at your company? Okay, there's three things I'd be looking at. I'd first of all be looking at my job descriptions to make sure they're not inflated. One of the things that the inflection point study underlined in spades is the job requirement inflation that's occurred. I don't know if it's national, but it certainly occurred here. You can't believe how many jobs require 3 to 5 years experience in the job description, but when you go in the company, you will find most of the people doing the work were hired with no experience or 6 months experience, et cetera. And all the CEOs and HR directors have acknowledged, yeah, that's a problem. So the first thing I would do is go back and look at my job descriptions to make sure I'm not ruling people out who might be interested. Because we hear this from college students all the time. I point them to that website, tell them about 26,000 jobs, they get on and they say, Dennis, they all require experience. There's nothing for me. So that's the first thing I do. If that's not a problem, college grads, none? Right. The workforce investment boards, and there are WIBs in all of our counties, they're the best suited organization to address people that are underemployed or unemployed looking for that kind of work. They know who they are. They know what the skill set is. I would be talking to the WIB about developing a partnership to help identify those people and get them whatever level of additional uptraining they might need to go there. Because you're right, I mean, the number of hotel rooms that we've added in this region, and it's now, did you hear that? Second largest growth in hotel rooms in the country, right? Behind LA. I think we've added north of 1,000 rooms. Somebody has to work there. So you're right, hospitality and retail, which is one of the sectors, by the way, that we did analyze in that report. The third, if you haven't looked at the inflection point report yet, it's on our website, it's all open source. Take a look, there's a whole section on retail and hospitality with some suggested strategies. Okay, good question, thank you. Anything else? Okay, well, I've given you back a little time. There's one here, yes.
Can you talk just a little bit, about that cracker plant facility
Yeah.
and the jobs that it would generate? What do you expect that the long-term outlook of that will be economically on the region?
The cracker?
Yeah.
Well, when they build these things, they build them with the plan to operate them for 30, 40, or 50 years. The capital investment is so large, so it'll be there for a long time. Annually, this generates $4 billion worth of economic activity every single year. And that does not count the spin-off stuff that is going to occur as a result of it. So there are going to be other, people will take those products, create derivatives from them, do other things. We haven't quantified that yet, but we've gone to places like the Gulf Coast where these facilities exist, and we've looked at what's happened down there. In some places, the derivative stuff's 2 or 3 times bigger than the original cracker. So I'm not forecasting that, but that's happened in various places on the Gulf Coast. So it has the potential to be really big. And yes?
What other kind of things are in the pipeline right now in terms of projects that are coming to Pittsburgh? Are you at liberty to talk about?
I am not. No, we're under non-disclosure. We have our team, our marketing team, the Pittsburgh Regional Alliance, has about 130 projects that we're working on right now. They're not all going to close, but that's a typical number. But virtually in every single one of them, I'm under non-disclosure, so I can't really say.
What's the close rate on those projects?
We close we typically, the ones that we're involved in, we close about 40 a year. So, and we typically work on the most competitive ones, the bigger ones, the ones that need a lot of attention, like Shell. So, yes, sir.
Are we any closer to having another airline to establish a hub in Pittsburgh? You don't have so many.
The question was, are we any closer to establishing an airline hub? The answer is no, and we probably never will get another hub here. The airline strategy, we're basically down to 4 big airlines now in the United States. They are cutting hubs, not adding them. They're consolidating in a smaller number of mega hubs. And while we'll see expansion in flights, and people like Southwest love Pittsburgh, you'll probably see more there. I don't think you're going to see anybody in any place in the country adding hubs. So going back to where we were, which was north of 500 flights a day, it'll probably never happen. That being said, as I mentioned, in the last 2 years, we've gone from 37 to 64 nonstops. We've added a number of additional flights to existing locations. We're working on more West Coast service, more European service. It will get better, but it's never going to go back. That strategy has passed, and we were the first of now 13 cities to be dehubbed. 13 of us now that have been dehubbed. We've actually done the better. We've done the best. I always get the. Do you ever wonder why the airport's empty but the parking lots are full? I did. I always wondered. So I asked. And the answer to the question is we have significantly increased flyers originating out of Pittsburgh since we've been dehubbed. Why? Prices went down 30%. They're much cheaper. I know you probably still think they're high, but they're much cheaper now than they were when we were a hub. People don't drive to Cleveland anymore. They fly out of Pittsburgh. So we're doing a good job with our originating flyers. Our relative growth is adding more flights, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's never going to happen. If you talk to Christine Casotis, first thing out of her mouth is, forget about hubs. That's never going to happen again. But here's what we can do. So, and unfortunately, we built the airport for a U.S. Air hub. So, there's somebody back here?
With the construction of condos, apartments in Pittsburgh and surrounding areas, will we get to a point where we'll have too much in the market value?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's about saturation on the residential side. Here's the good news. We have a 2-year plus waiting list in downtown and related areas for residential rentals right now. And they're building them at as fast a clip as they can build them right now for rentals. There's a bunch of reasons why rentals are better for developers than condos, not the least of which is new market tax credits and other types of things. But I think it's slowing down. I watch this every quarter. I think it's slowing down. I don't know that we've reached saturation yet because there's a lot of people that live in old rental housing stock that want new rental housing stock. But it's been amazing. We've gone from 2,000 people living downtown to like 7,000 downtown, and that doesn't include what's happening in the East End and South Side, et cetera. So it's been an unbelievable boom. Our occupancy rate's like 97%. It's one of the highest occupancy rates in the country. But I think inevitably it has to slow down. I think, I don't know when or what pace. The other problem we have is Class A office space. We have one of the largest occupancies on Class A office space in the key clusters here, up in Wexford, in downtown, in a few areas like that. But downtown's interesting now. I mean, you walk around downtown, there's all kinds of people walking dogs, young people studying on Market Square. There's a real dynamism that didn't exist even 5 years ago. So, yes, sir.
What steps are being taken to decide diversity to attract the younger generation in terms of transportation solutions?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we're doing a much better job with the colleges and universities, making the students aware of what's here and getting them to consider. Because interestingly, about 70% of our students would like to stay if there were opportunities. So that's one thing. The second thing is we've got a targeted digital marketing campaign that's ongoing right now. We've got 5 metros where there is a high concentration of expat Pittsburghers. Either they worked here, they lived here, they grew up here, went to school here, and they have the kind of skill sets that our companies are looking for. By the way, it's an interesting side point. The way we're able to identify those metros is which ones have the most Steeler bars. Sort of unscientific, but it actually works pretty damn well. The more Steeler bars, the more expat Pittsburghers there are, and it's real easy to identify where the concentration of Steeler bars are. We have digital marketing that goes into those areas. That's bringing them in. And then to your point, transportation. This younger generation doesn't want to get in a car and drive 10 or 20 miles to work and back every day. They want to live in a place where they can walk, bike, get on public transportation. And so we're in the second year of a multi-year initiative called the Regional Transportation Alliance. We took 95 people to Denver 2 years ago, saw a lot of interesting stuff, and these were government, business, and philanthropic leaders. But the biggest thing we saw was how they identified a regional multimodal transportation vision, sold the public on it, and were able to get a vote in favor of raising money that with the 0.5% sales tax increase in their case, that they monetized to invest $10 billion in a modern system. And people are flocking there, in some cases, for no reason other than the transportation network. We're in the process of trying to do something similar. We've got all 10 counties in the city involved. We've got a public sector and a private sector rep from each of the 11 entities on it. And in the first quarter of next year, we will release a public document defining what that vision looks like. And then we'll go from there. So, but it's, as you alluded to, this is a really important issue to the younger generation, particularly public transit of all type. Yes, ma'am.
With what you were talking about, would any of that include expansion of the T-line?
Good question. Question was about the T-line. There is certainly a want for expansion of the T-line. The cost is somewhat prohibitive right now. Let me give you an example. We've been working on a new, faster, more predictable connection between Oakland and downtown Pittsburgh, which are the second and third highest concentrations of economic activity in the state behind downtown Philadelphia. Originally, it was envisioned as a light rail system. And something where we would not only have a transportation connection, but you would be able to do development along it. Cost, $2 to $3 billion. Time, 15 years. Both problems. So we started to look at alternatives, and we went to Cleveland. We're picking on Cleveland, but in this case, we're modeling them. Cleveland did the same thing with what's called bus rapid transit, otherwise known as BRT. It's a dedicated lane, but it's a bus with wheels. In their case, it's a hybrid. I think it's electric diesel. And it runs from their university area to downtown. It costs $200 million to build. Has a similar, you walk straight on, it feels like you're on a train. The fact that there's tires is a non sequitur, but it feels like you're on a train. You just walk on and off. You pay off. It's very predictable, and they've had $4 billion of commercial development and residential development along the spine. That's what we're working on right now. The mayor and the county executive are very excited. Universities and the hospitals are engaged. We're pretty far down the path on the planning, and you'll probably hear, there was an article a couple weeks ago about it in the Post-Gazette. That's what you'll probably see. I'd love to see more T expansion. It's just very, very expensive way of doing public transit. there are alternatives that are probably a little better. Well, thank you. I hope it was helpful. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and enjoy your lunch.